let us understand what is optional. In Java 8, one of the feature which was introduced is optional class. This feature helps us to avoid null pointer exception. What is an optional in Java 8 and what problem does it solve? To handle the absence of a value, designed to provide a more explicit and safe way to dealing with potential null values to avoid null pointer exception. When before Java 8, in Java 7, whenever we are dealing with any object and if that object is giving us null value or an empty value, program throw null pointer exception. And if in an enterprise application, if any error happen because of null pointer, it will crash the program, and for developer to find out where it caused this null pointer is hard to debug. So in Java 8 they introduced that because in certain scenario we can expect that this value will can have a null value. What I'm trying to say is, for example, if you are passing a bank code to a third party, in the bank code you are getting the bank code details from suppose database. In the start of the service, or if you're starting your application, initially you will not be having any value, then your string will be empty, and when you're passing that value to third third party or third party API, you will be getting null pointer because you're passing empty string. In a manner also, you're iterating a list of objects. For example, bank code 1, bank code 2, null, bank code 3. Now when you're doing a operation on all the specific element of list object, bank code 1 dot length, bank code 2 dot length, null dot length, bank code 3 dot length. In the third position where we have null value, it will throw us null pointer exception. What are the key benefit of optional class which was introduced in Java 8? Null safety, readability, compiler support, method chaining. In this current video, first we will be understanding null safety or the very basic functionality of optional. Moving forward, I will be covering real world example with REST API and with database that how this actually works. Let's jump into coding. I have created two very basic example. One example will cater using without optional, and second example with the use of optional. So if you could see, as mentioned previously, that if suppose you have bank code and if one of the bank code is null and you are checking the length of that bank code, considering that this is name, instead we could also consider bank code. Now if we check our if you run this program, you will see that it is giving us null pointer exception because we are checking the length of our bank code, which is a null value. Now this is very very basic example. The reason I'm covering because there are a lot more complex and real world example. I'll cover that in my later series, but for the starting we will just consider very basic example so that you will understand that why it is happening or why this was introduced. If you are clear with this, moving to our example with use of optional. As you could see, we have same thing called consider bank code, where bank code is null. We can also rename it for your purpose. We will rename it so that you will understand a little better. Okay. Now, if you run this program, you could see that we are not getting any error. Now the question is why we are not getting any error? Because of this one line. In optional, there are many predefined methods like ofNullable, and so on. For now, we are using ofNullable to check whether this bank code may or may not contain null value. If you could see the difference between both the example, adding optional ofNullable method is giving us, if is not giving us null pointer exception in our code. Now just imagine this and in an enterprise application that you have written a REST API which is connecting to a database, and in that database someone is calling your API. So rather than giving them null pointer exception, you could say that this value does not exist, or you could pass a default value. Either way, there is one more way, is that optional is also used in a way that you are before even null pointer getting, you're upfront fixing that okay, this object is going to throw null pointer, so I'll upfront prevent it with a default mechanism. I hope this clarifies. Thank you.